if you had been able to tell your 20-year-old something self, hey, take 10% of every paycheck and put it away, and you'd listen to yourself. I'm not saying you would have, but if you had, you would have a heck of a lot more money now than if you didn't start saving until your 40s, right? And because hindsight is always 20/20 and we don't know what the future is going to hold, you just create additional freedom and flexibility for yourself when you start early and you contribute often.
And I know that, like, at least from my experience, time does you more favors than dollars. So, like, contributing a little earlier is better than contributing a lot later. Hey, Jessica, welcome to the show. Happy to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. So briefly, can you just say hi to everyone and tell us who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Jessica Searcy Kmetty. I am the president and CEO of Searcy Financial Services. We are a wealth management firm, which means that we do both financial planning and investment management with our clients. We've got clients across about 39 different states, so we are truly nationwide.
I love that. So what I want to do for our listeners today, because a lot of our listeners are either solopreneurs, early stage business owners, or maybe they're just starting to think about how retirement savings can be a byproduct of their business. So I want to dive into a few of the options that they have and better understand what is available to them, because I know that this is a very much the wild, wild west online of trying to Google this stuff, and a lot of folks don't understand it. So let's break it down for them in a simple way. So what are some of the ways that entrepreneurs can save for retirement now that they're no longer working a corporate job?
Yeah, I guess the good news is there are so many different options, right? You
Right.
can save into something like an IRA, a traditional IRA, or into a Roth IRA, or you can go the solo 401k route, or even create um, a business plan, right? For employees, if you have, a person or two that you want to include as well.
So let's say somebody doesn't have employees. Let's say they just started a business and they're making enough cash flow that they know they can do something to, pay themselves and be able to save for retirement. What types of options are available? And then can you also break down real quick traditional versus Roth?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the best route, especially if cash flow is an issue initially, something that you can do kind of right off the bat, is decide to fund an IRA or a Roth IRA. Okay. And so a lot of times people have a question about, well, should I do a Roth or should I do a traditional? And kind of what's the difference between the two? And so um, traditional IRA could be deductible or it could be non-deductible depending upon your income level. But you can make a contribution to your IRA. An IRA just means individual retirement account. That's all that means, individual retirement account. So you can set it up pretty much on any platform with any custodian, and you can select any funds, mutual funds, ETFs, like there's lots of different options to invest those in order to allow them to grow. And you can make those contributions every single year up to the limit that the IRS will allow you to make.
And when we talk about traditional versus Roth, what are the key differences?
Yeah, so it has to do with how the money gets saved and how it grows. So if you've got a traditional IRA, you're going to make a contribution. It might be tax deductible, or it might not be, depending upon your income level. You can make that contribution. It grows. So when you invest it, it grows tax deferred. And then when you pull the money out, if you took the deduction on the front end, then it's going to be taxable when it comes out. And if you didn't, then it might not be taxable, but the growth might be. With the Roth IRA, you are going to put that money in as after-tax money. So you bring home your paycheck, you bring home your income, you pay your taxes, and then you make your Roth IRA contribution. The cool thing about Roth is that you can make the contributions. They, again, grow tax deferred, but you can also pull money out tax free. So typically, as long as you're going to keep the money in there for at least 5 years, you can pull your contributions back out tax free. And if you keep it in there until you're over 59 and a half, you can pull all of it out tax free,
Wow.
which is a really cool benefit.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you can pull out what you put in, your contributions, that you can pull them out sooner than retirement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a really cool planning tool, especially as as a small business owner. If you're thinking, man, I want to save money, but I don't want to have it all locked up in retirement, because what if I need it? Or what if I want to pull it back out and I want to reinvest it into my business? Or what if I want to, I don't know, buy a house, or or whatever your other goals might be. And so it's a really tax efficient way to shovel that money aside, get it saved, let it be invested, and then you can pull out that principal down the road for whatever you might need it for.
And then theoretically recontribute it, right?
Yeah, you could.
Cool.
You could.
So we talk about the IRA, the individual retirement account. So there's basically two flavors, your Roth and your traditional, based on when you want to pay taxes and how you want to pay taxes. And obviously, we always recommend you work with a tax advisor, someone who understands your situation and can help you plan that, because there isn't really, I get the question all the time, what's better, Roth or traditional? And there's no like, what's better. It's what's better for you and what's better for you right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, and a lot of time when I get that question, it's, well, should I do the Roth now because my income's lower now? And the question is, well, yeah, but what's your income going to be when you go to use those monies,
Right.
right? I don't know the answer to that. The tax laws change all the time, right?
Yeah, you're basically betting on yourself and the law to figure out where you're going to be.
Right.
Uh, Personally, and just like to full transparency for the audience, I have both. I like to not put all my eggs in one basket, or I'll be taxed on all of it at the same time. I want to like spread it out a little bit. So sometimes you need a tax advantage now, and you want to contribute to a traditional today and get a tax deferral or tax benefit, meaning that you're not paying taxes on the money that you're contributing. And then for some, I'm going, well, I would like my money to grow tax free in a Roth as well, because I don't know if at the time I pull the money out, I'm going to be making more or less than I do today. So I want to kind of have a blend of both. And that's not necessarily advice. None of this is going to be advice, but that's just what I do because I'm not really sure. And because of
Hmm.
that, instead of taking inaction and not doing any of it, I do a little bit of both.
That's a really great strategy. I like to use three buckets. So I
Mm-hmm.
use the tax deferred bucket, right, to lower my current income. I use the after tax bucket, which might be your your Roth IRA, it might be a Roth 401k, or it might even actually be another little fancy bucket with which is the HSA, right? Because you can
Yeah.
kind of get a similar Roth-esque kind of a flavor from that. And then an after tax, right? Because you want to be able to control the taxation so that if you are in retirement and you are now living on your portfolio and Social Security, you want to be able to kind of control, because you're not always going to have like a totally flat level of lifestyle. There might be years where you need more money to pull out, but you don't necessarily want to push yourself into a higher income tax bracket.
This is true. Yeah. And I think that, especially right now, a lot of folks are nervous about what's going to happen when our generation retires. And it feels like it's so far away, and yet it's not. Like, it feels it's always felt very untouchable because we've never really known what was, what that age of life was going to bring. And I think that as we near that and as we start planning for retirement, we have to be more realistic about like, what will we need? What are our goals? What will we be doing in my case, like 30 to 40 years? I have no idea. That's actually a whole lifetime away for me, but it's going to be an interesting evolution. And I think it's always wise. I know people will say, and I want your take on this too, that, investing in the market, oh, I got plenty of time to save for retirement. I've got plenty of time. And we don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know, I don't want to put all my money in here. There's a lot of the naysayers towards saving for retirement in this type of fashion, what do you respond to them with, and how do you advise clients when they have that type of perception?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question because when the market's doing really well, everybody's like, "Ooh, I want to be in the market because market's doing really well and I've never in my
Right.
lifetime seen anything but go up," right? Well, now we're in this like weird period where inflation is rising and the market is not going up. It's kind of going down. Well, maybe this week it's going sideways, right? But
Yeah.
it brings out kind of the worry wart in all of us, right?
Hmm.
Or maybe not all of us, most of us. And so there without knowing exactly what's going to happen, the thing is you have to do some sort of action. It kind of goes back to your previous comment where in the absence of having 100% like I absolutely know what the future is going to hold, I would say take action early and often because the more you do now for your future self down the road, like, if you had been able to tell your 20-year-old something self, hey, take 10% of every paycheck and put it away, and you'd listen to yourself. I'm not saying you would have, but if you had, you would
Yeah.
have a heck of a lot more money now than if you didn't start saving until your 40s, right? And
Yep.
because hindsight is always 2020 and we don't know what the future is going to hold,
Right.
you just create additional freedom and flexibility for yourself when you start early and you contribute often.
And I know that, like, at least from my experience, time does you more favors than dollars. So, like, contributing a little earlier is better than contributing a lot later.
Absolutely, because then you're always playing catch up, right? If you start from day one and or as early as you possibly can, right? I know that's not necessarily realistic for everyone, but if you start today, right? If you haven't done
Hmm.
it yet, if you start today, you're going to be in a much better place than if you start 10 years from now.
Totally. So, for someone who maybe, let's just say someone listening has never set up their retirement accounts, at least not in an individual level, maybe they participated in their company's 401k with a lot of guidance and just signing the papers and doing what HR said, right? But maybe they haven't been like super intentional about how they're saving for retirement or been involved and engaged in the process. How would you recommend they get started as like a kind of first step in dipping their toe into these types of things, knowing that they're not necessarily financial experts or know what to invest in?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ways to go about that. There are people who say, "Look, I don't know what I don't know and it makes me nervous and I just don't want to have to do it." For those people or they say that is not the highest and best use of my time, talent, and energy. I'd rather spend all my time working on my business because my payoff's going to be much higher, right?
Totally.
For those kind of people, I would say look for maybe a fee only financial advisor, somebody who, is super transparent. They're not going to be, you know, shoving a bunch of crap into your portfolio that's going to be making a lot of commissions. There are advisors that are out there that will work with you, that will manage that portfolio on your behalf, or that will give you guidance and recommendations if that's more of your groove. For the rest of the people who say, "Look, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm willing to take some time, energy, and effort and figure it out." There are a lot of resources that are out there. You can kind of dip your toe in the water by, finding some good like exchange traded funds are always my favorite because they're super lean in expense and they tend to mirror what the market is doing. And so it's an easy way to say, hey, I'm just going to buy this ETF. Maybe it's an S&P 500, like it matches that,
Right.
or maybe it's mid cap or small cap. Just pick like two or three or four just super plain vanilla, like not super sexy, but it'll get the job done, and put your portfolio into four or five different positions and let it go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think people try to like get involved too much in turning the knobs and playing with it. And I say, just leave it there. You can check on it. I like to check on mine every quarter just to see what it's doing, but I don't take much action on it. The other thing is they have these, and Jessica brought up ETFs, exchange traded funds. They're typically bundles of securities like stocks where you can buy a piece of the whole market or a piece of an industry or a piece of a typical sector. So like if you want to invest in tech startups or emerging economies or even real estate, you can do a REIT ETF, real estate investment trust ETF. So you have, it's not just about the necessarily the vanilla of the S&P and you have to be all in on that. You have all these different other industries that you can play around with, and you can just use those to participate in those different markets without having to feel like you're committing to single stocks. And I mean, what would you say is the argument for an ETF, Jessica, over, let's say, a single stock if there's a particular company you like?
Yeah, for me, it's all about risk, right? Because
Totally.
I might be able to quasi control my own organization, my own firm, my own company, but there's still so much risk there that like if I'm going to go out and now I'm going to make a bet on somebody else's company, right? Buy
Right.
their stock, I have no control over what they're doing, right? And so I don't want to put, to your point earlier, all my eggs in one basket and say, look, I'm going to make this bet that this one company is going to have an outstanding year and I'm going to put all my all my eggs in their basket. I would much rather say, well, what's an area where I really feel strongly like this is going to be something that we're going to do going forward. And maybe for you that could be something like clean energy, right? That's a really good one to talk about because there's people who either are really for it or really against it, right? But if you're one of those people that's really for it and you think that that's where the future is headed, by all means, find yourself a clean energy ETF and you can get that basket of all of those different companies that might be making a contribution in that space.
Totally true. Now, shifting gears for a second to identify the difference here. So, we talk about investing in different products, which, by the way, I'll disclaim this episode out the wazoo in the beginning, but not advice, not financial advice. We're just saying what two somewhat smart people, I'm going to speak for myself on that one, um, happen to put their money in. We're not telling you to do that with your money. Absolutely contact your advisors and make sure you're well informed before you make any investment decisions. But these options are available to you, and we're just making you aware of them. Now, here's the thing too, is you might be thinking, well, okay, I get it, invest in ETFs, let the money grow, but why should I invest in a retirement account over just putting it into, let's say, a brokerage account with, like I personally, I have Charles Schwab or one of these brokers, right? Why don't I just buy them and leave them in there? Why should I put them into a retirement fund? What's the difference, Jessica, in how those are treated and what to look out for?
Yeah, so you can absolutely take after tax money and you can set it in a brokerage account, you can invest and you can let it grow. The thing with that though is you're going to have tax consequences all along the way. So if you buy, let's say you buy a mutual fund, okay? You buy a mutual fund and you hold the mutual fund for that entire year. At the end of the year, you're probably still going to get a 1099. You're still going to get some sort of, hey, you have a tax bill due. And you sit here and you go, but I didn't sell anything, right? But you bought into something that had some churning going on during the year. They bought and sold things within that mutual fund. And now you have a tax bill, even if you didn't actually make a dime. Okay. So that's a piece that's mutual fund specific when you hold it in a taxable account, which a brokerage account
Right,
is a taxable account, right?
right.
If you bought a stock or you bought an ETF and you hold it for the whole period, you wouldn't necessarily have that. However, eventually you're going to want to sell it. And when you sell it, you're going to have a long term or you're going to have a short term gain or loss, right? And so that's going to show up on your tax return and you're going to have to pay the piper on it. If you use a retirement account, you don't pay taxes all along the way on the investments. And so it becomes a really great way for you to invest early, invest often. As you sell things, buy new things, you're taking the entire pile. You're not taking that pile minus whatever taxes you had to fork over. So that's where it can
Totally.
be a really good planning opportunity.
Yeah, and I'll go back to my point too, saying I have all of the above of everything. So I have a taxable
Mhm.
brokerage where I play around with, we have access to the money. So if you needed to pull it out, you could. I have a Roth IRA, I have a traditional IRA, and I even have a SEP IRA through my business, which we're going to talk about in a second. And you are not limited in the number, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not limited in the number of accounts you can have. Like you don't have to pick one and stick to it. You can have a variety of different baskets to put your eggs in, if you will. The only thing is that you're going to be limited in how many eggs you can put in each one at a certain point. But am I right? There's like really there's no downside to opening an account and putting some money in it.
That's absolutely correct. And so very often what you'll see people that kind of graduate from one bucket to another as well, right? So maybe when they're in their, 20s and 30s, they can do a Roth. They are under the income limits for that.
Right.
And so they're making contributions to a Roth. And eventually they get to a point where it's like, well, good news is you're making a lot of money. Bad news is you can't make a Roth contribution anymore, right?
Right.
And so they might switch over and then they might go and say, well, I'm going to do a traditional IRA.
Right.
And then within their business, you might start and you might have a SUP or you might have a solo K, right? And then eventually you say, hey, it's no longer just me. I'm going to add some additional people in. Well, if you have additional people in there, you can't do a solo K anymore. So these aren't like a set it once and keep it forever. They might be kind of a growth path.